Hey there, Chad here. Thanks for joining me. This is NewsTower, and I've done some NewsTower videos before and kind of started doing a Let's Play kind of combined with a little bit of a tutorial, and I think that's what we're going to do again. I am not going to pick up where I left off before because the game has changed dramatically over the last couple of months. There's a lot of new content, and it's all good, but also I think the game is a little harder than it was before, and that maybe isn't the worst thing. There really wasn't a way to set the difficulty of the game, so this additional difficulty, unless I'm just imagining it or getting really bad random number generating, the game definitely has a little bit more edge to it than it did before. I was struggling to stay ahead of the curve, where in my previous few videos that really wasn't a problem. So we're going to go ahead and start a new game and just kind of play through and see what has changed. We are going to skip the intro. If you have never played the game, the intro isn't the worst thing. It kind of gives you a few pointers as to how to get into the game. But if you're watching this video, you might be able to just do that on your own anyway. So also, the introduction includes a couple of things that really don't apply to the overall game, and it just feels a little kind of off for that reason. Now, that introduction does give you a little bit of backstory, more so than what we see here. In this story, we just have this, and there's like one more storyline that'll happen like after the first year. But what we're going to do is give the paper a name, and we're going to call this one the Sounding Rocket. Now, I don't think in 1931 they would have known what a sounding rocket is, but I thought it was a fun name, and that's what we're going to go with. So we're going to confirm that. And that gets sent off, and we now have our tower. Now, as soon as the game starts, we're going to pause it by pressing space. And there's a few reasons for that. So in this first two episodes, I'm going to go over setting up my tower for the first week. I think the first episode will be actually doing the build, and the second episode is going to be running that first week and seeing how the game plays. And then from there, we'll go and see what else kind of transpires. There are new features in the game, like new desks and things like that that we can get. And when I say a desk, it's like a part of a newspaper. So like, one of them that I saw is obituaries, and another one was help wanted ads. So we can add workers that can work on those things to put in our paper. They've also added the maximum number of pages that the paper can have. We will be starting with a single page paper, and it is January of 31. We are paused, and it is, we're going to call it just a little bit past, probably about 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, there it says, actually doesn't, it gives us the time. It's 8:17 in the morning on January of 1930. Now, each week is a month in the game. That's something to know. We start on Monday and we go through Saturday, and then on Sunday we're reminded that we need to print our paper. The paper is a weekly, and this is the start of our tower. We're going to add some floors. Floors cost money. First one is $1,000, and the next one is going to be $2,500, and they just keep going up from there. But I find it very useful to start with 3 total floors. So what I want to do right now is just basically do my basic build out for my first tower. You're welcome to copy this exactly how I do it. You're certainly not obligated to do that either. But what I normally do is I'll put a stairwell up to the second floor over here, and then everything else we're going to have to do by going to the building button. You can also press B, and we're going to start with adding some stairs in another location, and that is from here to here. I like to put a stairwell over here that kind of gets away from using this main entrance, and there's some reasons for that that'll become more clear as we play further into the game. The very first folks you need to hire are the folks that work the telegraph machines. I'm going to call them telegraphers. I feel like that's correct. I think telegraphers is probably equally acceptable, and I'm just trying to remember which button they are. I think it's this one. There we go. So we're going to start by hiring 2 of these folks, and they're the ones who initially capture the news stories that are out there, and they kind of direct your reporters how to proceed. Now, a lot of that is kind of obfuscated away, but that's really the idea. They're going to be the folks that grab the grab the stories first, said that backwards, and then a reporter will get assigned to a story to work it. We are going to add some lights because that is generally necessary. Folks don't like to work in the dark. You can find workers that will work in the dark without problem. but we're not going to count on that. We're going to go ahead and just add folks. And I also want to say that the way I set this up initially has nothing to do with what it's going to look like probably after the first, I don't know, well, let's say year and a half. I think that's probably a good time frame to expect that I'll start to really change the tower. All right, so this is the lighting configuration, and now we're going to add some other stuff. I suppose we might as well get started with adding reporter desks. I normally set up for 3 or 4 reporters right off the bat. We won't hire them all right away. We will hire them as needed, and we'll cover that strategy here in just a minute. The other thing that we absolutely will have to have is a typesetter. We're going to put them here, and an assembler. We're going to put them here. I am going to eventually want storage, and I'm just going to go ahead and get it out there. Now, one thing to note, we had $15,000, I think, to start, and we can spend every dime of that. We don't want to. We can spend a lot of that, though, in this first week. We're going to be running very close to the bottom of that dollar amount. One of the things we'll be a little cautious of is not hiring folks we don't need right away, which is part of the reason I may not end up with a third reporter that first week. However, if you're going to hire somebody, from what I can tell, there is no difference in hiring them on Monday or hiring them on Sunday. You still pay them for the whole week. So if we're going to end up hiring a reporter, a reporter's a bad example for a couple of reasons we'll get to in a minute. We are absolutely going to hire these telegraphers. There's no reason to wait beyond immediately to hire them. And kind of the same is true for typesetter and the assembler. A few other roles we're hiring as well this first week is the sweeping station, so the sweeper. That's somebody we'll hire right away, and they will get put to work right away. I'm also going to hire somebody to run a resupply desk. And then finally, one of the more important things is we need to set up a bathroom, and that bathroom will include, or at least will require, a cleaning station nearby, and we'll hire somebody to take care of the bathroom. Basically, they'll help keep it clean. So I'm going to go ahead and set up that bathroom now. And the way I tend to do that, yeah, this light's going to have to move. We'll set up the bathroom here on the second floor next to that cleaning station. I usually put in 2 commodes, and then we will find the comfort items and find the sink. And we'll put a sink in right here. Another wall will go in. I should have done that probably already with a door. No light. We need to add a light in there. And then we want to add a few other comfort items. Actually, a very important one is you want to put tiles in the bathroom because that cuts down on odor. So we'll put tiles in there. That will help tremendously, but then we also want a few other comfort items to help with that, including an air vent. And we'll put in a fan, and that tends to help quite a bit. Another thing that will help but we don't have access to yet, believe it or not, is a mirror. We will have a mirror in the near future, and we'll add one when we can. But for now, this is what we're going to go with. Now, one other thing I want to do is add acoustic panels up here where these folks work, because it will get very, very loud. And noise is something that causes discomfort for our workers, so we want to try to avoid that as much as we can. Now, it looks like I have most everything in here. There are a couple of things that I am intentionally leaving out, and we will go ahead and get to those. I was just kind of looking to measure some stuff, make sure that I'm looking at this correctly. We will eventually hire a workman to do, whoops, that's the wrong one, utility. We'll hire somebody to work on the workbench. I'm going to go ahead and put it in, but I'm not going to hire anybody for that just yet. The other major thing we have to put in is a printer. If you don't have a printer, you can't print a newspaper. So the printer parts are a little interesting. First of all, you have the printer belt. Printer belt, you get an infinite amount of it, and it costs no money. So connecting pieces of the printer, you don't have to worry about that, and it's relatively free. Interestingly enough, the printer belt can go through walls, and it can also go through floors. Now, there's some rules to that. When you place like a printer module, you generally can only attach to it from the side or straight down into it. There's no way to come up through it. So the fact that it can go through floors is great, but you generally have to make a 90-degree turn then immediately to get to where it needs to go. Eventually, my printer will take up more than one floor, but for now, we're going to keep it simple. I start with the output module, and I put it as far away as possible. Then we have the ability to put 2 printer page modules. We're only going to do one for now. We're just going to do this first one, and I'm going to put it here, and that will give enough space to put a second one later. You can see that would line up, but we're not going to place it yet. And then, of course, we have to put in the input. And there's the input. Now, 2 more steps. We're going to put in a wall with a door, because you do need to be able to get into that room. But we want to cut down on that sound, right? So the wall will help with insulating sound from these guys. Actually, I generally put a door in here too, come to think of it. And that will kind of help with sound as well, because these guys generate a lot of sound. We want the sound to travel as little as possible. So we'll do that. What was I looking for? I think I need a light here, at least eventually. And from a comfort perspective, I feel like there was something I was thinking about, and I can't think of it now, but acoustic panel here that will help for that room. Oh, I know what I'm missing. I want to address the temperature issue. The printer will get very hot if we put industrial wallpaper. It gives us this brick look, and that will help with the temperature. Now, one other thing, I did forget to put in the printer belt. We'll do that. We basically just drop it on one module and drag it to another. I can drag it all the way across there in one attempt, click, and it has installed it, and we now have an operating printer. When we go to add another page, we'll just drop another one of these right in here. You'll notice we only have one more of those available. This icon right here is how many of those we have. We only have one more. We'd be able to drop it here. We can get up to 6 of these, and we'll look at that as we move through the game on how that will happen. All right, I feel like that's almost everything. Maybe missing, yes, a water cooler. We want to put in a water cooler because our folks will want water over time. I'm going to actually put in a couple, and I can't put one there. We're going to put one here on the first floor for the reporters, and we'll put a second one in. I can move this desk over just a little, and it would give enough room for a water cooler here. That would allow these folks to get to it pretty easily. These guys don't have one, though. At $100 a pop, yeah, I can afford one more. We'll put one right here. So these guys have quick access to one as well. So everybody has reasonable access to a water cooler, and we have everything else. Now, the rest of the video, we're going to talk about hiring staff. And as I mentioned, we don't really care if we hire them on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Sunday. It doesn't matter. We pay the same amount for the week, as best I can tell. What we want to do is we can get to hiring people 2 ways. We can click on these, which is the easier way to go, and that's what we're going to do. You can also click here on hiring, and it'll give you the same chart, but it doesn't start you in the spot where you kind of need to be. So we want to hire telegraphers first. We're going to click here, and it takes us into the hiring, takes us to the job bank for utility. Utility is the folks that work these kinds of machines. In fact, specifically, it's the telegraph machines, the typesetting machine or desk, and the assembler. That's what these different skills refer to. Every worker has 3 skills, and that even includes reporters. Reporters have 3 types of stories that they can work. This is just the general workers, these utility workers. They have skills in assembling, in telegraphy, and in typesetting. Now, we want to, as somebody gets more skill, they're faster at the job, so the job doesn't take as long to complete. So generally, you want to have people with better skill, but you also have to think about how much you're paying them. You could hire everybody at the highest amount, but your paper needs to churn out some money so that you can continue to afford that. And there is one more consideration, and this is relatively new to the game. If you've seen the game before but haven't played it, it's possible this is new. They now have these extra traits. Now, this guy doesn't have a trait at all. Steve doesn't have any traits, and he costs $60. That's pretty normal. Bennett doesn't have any traits, and he costs $60. Again, pretty normal. You'll notice that Steve has 2 skill points, one in typesetting and one in assembling. Bennett only has one in assembling. Perfectly okay. So far, so good. The only person that has one in using the telegraph room is Agnes. So we're going to hire Agnes for one of those roles. But I want to show that she also has this trait. She's careful. The machine that she is working will break down less frequently. That is awesome. That means we spend less on maintenance and spend less time worrying about Agnes having a machine that she can use. So we're going to drop Agnes there. Now the other thing we have is nobody else has skill points in this, and we have 2 folks that have skills in both typesetting and assembling, and we're going to need to hire them as well. Those are these desks here, typesetting and assembling. So the fact that we're kind of good, we can hire either of these folks and put them in either one, and they already have skill in it, so that'll save them a little time. Initially we're talking about a few hours per job, so if it takes 12 hours to do typesetting, somebody with a skill point, it might only take 10 hours to do that. And it continues to get better as you get more points. Let's go ahead and for the other telegraph machine, let's look at this skill too. This is Larry. His trait is he's deadline driven, so 25% increase in task speed on Saturdays and Sundays. Honestly, that makes him a really good assembler, because what it seems to happen is you come down to that last day and they're just not quite done yet. So I think we're going to make Larry, even though he costs 50% more, he's going to be our assembler for now. We're going to go ahead and hire him and drop him right there. It says that it'll take him 9 hours to do a job. Usually it takes somebody 12. So that's a huge bonus. Out of these 2, Steve makes sense to be the other of the typesetter because he has a skill point in it. So we'll go ahead and drop him there. And it'll take him 14 hours. I think 16 is the standard. And then finally, this telegraph machine will be run by Bennett. We'll drop Bennett right in here. So now we have our telegraphers set up, and I'm going to move this light to make it just a little more centered. We have assemblers. We don't have reporters yet, and part of the reason I haven't done that is we don't know what the stories are that are coming in just yet. So when we start getting stories, we'll want to hire our reporters. Until then, we can hold off. And it's more about utilitarianism, not trying to save money. If I get a sports story, I want to make sure I have a sports reporter. That's really what it comes down to. So we'll hire the first couple as needed. Finally, I do want to hire a sweeper immediately, and nobody has points in sweeping. We do have one person that has a good trait, yearly peaker, 2% speed crease each month, but it resets in January. That's still a really good skill. They're doing 24% faster in December than they were in January. This is smell tolerant. That might make a good cleaner as well, but we have somebody with points in cleaning. We're probably going to want to go with that. This one has maintenance. We don't plan on hiring a maintenance person just yet. Let's go ahead and go with Frederick as sweeper. He has no skills anywhere. So we'll drop him here. And then for resupply, we'll go with heat tolerant is actually a really good one for the resupply desk, because they have to come up here into the printer quite a bit and it's hot. So you want to kind of keep them cool where you can. We don't actually really need to hire that person in the first week. So I think we're going to hold off for now. We're just going to let it go with what we have, and then we're going to let it rip. There are just a couple of other things we can add in the meantime that'll make their lives a little easier though, and kind of keep them a little more happy. One of the big ones is a clock. For whatever reason, a clock makes people more happy. And what I've learned is the comfort level of these folks, which is kind of the happiness thing, is dropping a lot faster than it did in my previous start of a playthrough. And so I want to kind of make sure everybody is in a good mood and good to go right from the get-go. So we're going to drop a few clocks in here where folks are generally working. Guess it wouldn't hurt to put one here. As temperature issues in that come up, we can look and see where the comfort issues are by clicking the view button here and then going down to comfort. So the bathroom is always going to be smelly. That's just facts. The printer room is always going to be loud. It's also going to be hot. Facts. Not a whole lot we can do about it. We can add like an acoustic panel, at least for a while. Eventually that won't be terribly helpful because we'll be adding more pieces and it just gets louder and louder. However, eventually there's also acoustic wallpaper that will help with sound. Effectively, your best bet is to get maintenance guys and resupply guys and gals that don't mind heat or don't mind sound, and so they get less uncomfortable when they have to go and work in this room. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that, oh, trash cans. Trash cans are important. We want to put those next to folks who work with paper, and that includes the telegraphers, that includes the assembler and typesetter, and of course our reporters. And a lot of times you can put these like under desks, which is awesome. We're gonna put one right there, and that will help quite a bit. Helps this guy with his job because they tend to throw paper in the waste baskets then. And for the price, it's a pretty good buy. Okay, were there any more? I do want to point this out. All of the, not all, most of these things have the infinity symbol because we can have as many of them as we need, and that's fine. There are a couple of limitations to that. Power is important. Anything that uses power has the one lightning bolt guy here. That basically means he's drawing power. He draws 1 power. We have 50 power available to us. We're already using 27. So as you can see, buying stuff that uses power will start to take away from our total power capacity. Eventually we can build a generator right down, was it here? Yeah, you can build a generator, $1,200, $1,250. It will produce 50 power, but it produces a ton of noise, heat, and dirt. It requires coal, and it is unprestigious. We're not terribly worried about that just yet. It is big. If we kind of drag it down here, you can see it is really, really large. I will normally put it on the first floor and kind of find a way to wall it off a little bit so it is as minimally impactful as possible. But for now, we don't have that option. Lights, as you can see, they take 1 power. So you do want to pay attention to that and be sure to maintain it. Of course, we have money we have to worry about. Money is your primary currency, and so we need to keep that in mind as well. And I feel like there's one other thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about comfort. Yes, I just remembered what it is. So when we find the comfort items, I mentioned that a lot of these have the infinity symbol, and that's great. The other thing is, though, some of them don't have that. They have a count. There is only one of these, this red apple painting. It is an exclusive. It counters noise and temperature and smell and provides prestige, but we only get one of them. So wherever I put that, you can see it's going to give a bump to comfort, but it only is going to give a bump at that spot, and only I can only put one of them. So we'll want to kind of see as our folks are working over the next couple of, well, we'll call it weeks and months, since they're synonymous. We'll want to see if there's areas where people are regularly losing concentration. When they lose their concentration, their work gets sloppy. From a reporter perspective, it leads to bad reporting. Your typesetter and your assembler, the quality of their work will suffer, and that becomes a problem. All right, well, that is setting up your tower initially. We will move into the next episode where we start the week and see how the game loop actually plays across that first week. Thanks for joining me. Hope you hang around for the next one. Thanks for your time, and until next time, fair travels.